for 15 years. This week is actually 15 years. And this is the first time that someone has ever served pizza from a student meal. And it's so grounding to me. Every event I'm ever at, there's like an entire catered affair. And I'm like, when did we start eating catered food at university? So I love having pizza. Yeah, this is like what it's supposed to be like, as far as I can tell. So Katie means I just pull the cheese off. So what Tina shared about why we're meeting at this time is like the most ironic introduction to our seminar today about a user-centered design approach. The entire idea that a program conceived of as being a tool for students to accelerate their business ventures, but the time that we meet is convenient for the 3 instructors and not for the students is like the classicist. And I couldn't be more grateful for that example because it sets the stage for exactly what we're going to be talking about today, which is about applying a user-centered approach to all of the ventures that you're already working on. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what is user-centered design, or you might have referred to it as human-centered design. Back in the day, this was often referred to as design thinking, but we don't really use that terminology so much anymore. We're going to talk through some examples of products and companies that have successfully moved through user-centered design processes in order to gain traction and to make more money. We're going to have a little moment where you get up and move around a little bit, do some stuff out of the classroom, and we're going to focus on your particular venture and how you can apply what we're learning today to your own venture. So we have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, but I feel very confident that we'll be successful in doing it. Do you all know, I'm curious if you all know, the primary reason or reasons why startups lose all their money? Anyone have a sense of like why startups belly up most commonly? There's a couple top reasons. I'm thinking about like the top 3 reasons. Anyone have any thoughts? What do you think?
The obvious one that I can think of is that they initially try to capture the market a lot by giving a lot of freebies, kind of, and then the money that is coming from somewhere and then it's exhausted, and in short, you're not profitable enough.
That's a great idea. So I think the bottom line of profitability, that's like the duh thing, right? I don't know about the freebie part, but yeah, profitability. It's kind of a blanket answer for sure. Thank you. Yeah, way in the back.
Mismanaged funds, kind of like instead of listening to the customer and the consumer for their market, they kind of go with what they think is more in line, and then they just like invest in the incorrect.
So you've embedded 2 possible ideas in one, which is a combination of mismanaged funds, as you said, and also not listening to the customer. Yeah, good suggestions. What do you think? There's another hand here, and then you'll be next.
It's a single point.
Yeah. Can you say more about that for folks who might not know that terminology?
It's focuses on a very niche market, and you may not have to grow as large as you want to do.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great explanation. And what were you gonna add?
Yeah, I was gonna say that there's just like so many different service providers in the market. For example, CRM, there's HubSpot,
Yes.
Apollo, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my point is you gotta really talk to your peers, maybe startup builders who have gone through this to get the best practices, so don't waste time and money on things that are actually not gonna generate ROI.
That's a great suggestion. So of all the things you all shared, there are a couple of those that come up in the top 3. There is the not being able to predict how much things cost. So essentially, I may or may not have been successful, but it doesn't really matter anyway because I lost all my money before I even got to sell anything, which is significant. So it's not necessarily I've wasted money, but that there was a tremendous amount of upfront costs to even opening my doors, as it were, or selling my first product. And I wasn't able to either generate or have a trust fund or whatever the case is that would allow me to start with a tremendous amount of capital. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. Another one is team dynamics. So I underestimated the way that our dynamics would play out and things went poorly for me. And another one is a misunderstanding of the customer need, or what's often called market fit. And I want to really interrogate that idea of a misunderstanding of the customer need. It's the second most common reason. The sort of concept of like capital generally is the number one reason, and the number two reason is a disconnect between what I thought the customer needed or wants and what the customer really needed or wants. And I want to really put a point to that. What an individual needs or wants often manifests very differently than what they're willing to pay money for. So there might be a whole lot of things that an individual human being might tell me straight face, this is what I want, doesn't mean they're going to spend their money on it. And that's what we refer to as a misunderstanding of a customer need or a fit. You might have had a million conversations at a million family reunions with a million people who all agree that they want the exact same thing that you want, spend a lot of time on it. And when push comes to shove, even the people that you love the most in your own family are not willing to spend $1 on your thing. That is not because they need, quote, customer education. That is not because they need more information on how this will value their life, their value or impact their life. It's because you have misunderstood or underestimated the value that your product is able to provide to someone. People will pay a lot of money for even very, very small solutions that dramatically impact their day-to-day life. And that's what we're going to spend our time talking about today, is this idea of how do we really come to learn what it is the user wants, not what the world wants, not what society wants. A lot of our sustainable development goals were developed by people who feel very, very strongly about what the universe wants. But the question is, how do we bridge the gap between what an individual human or human entity, AKA the buyer for a major corporation or the buyer for a university, will spend money on in pursuit of a particular SDG? You tracking that? So we might all agree on this campus, we might all agree that we absolutely should be using only compostable and biodegradable plates. Everybody, no one disagrees on that. Everybody knows landfill information. Everybody knows that how much time it takes to regrow trees once they're cut down. Everybody understands carbon emissions. Everybody here. Trina knows that best of all. Trina absolutely still bought that pizza in those pockets, those cups and those plates. It's really important to understand why that is. What is Trina's experience as a program manager at the University of Southern California that motivated her to spend her money on that product and not your beautiful sugarcane biodegradable box that no pizza company in Los Angeles has so far purchased or decided to use on a rainy day in Los Angeles? That's a really important thing to understand and be aware of, because your great belief and sometimes fantasy in the goodness of humans does not meet out with the practical day-to-day needs that an individual has in their life. No one is going to give Trina any credit for buying sugarcane boxes. In fact, someone's probably going to give her a hard time about it. You wasted all of our budget on sugarcane boxes, and also they melted in the rain, and also the only person that sells them is this pizza company in Eagle Rock, and now all the pizza's cold before it got here. No advantage in Trina's life to following that particular environmental goal. It doesn't show up in her performance review. Her life doesn't get better. She doesn't get more budget next year. And it will be useless for you to try and say, well, then we need to convince her boss otherwise. A user-centered approach understands what would make, in this case, Trina's life better. What would make her day-to-day experience look different? What are the factors that would change her mind, that would make her spend money on a product in pursuit of her own goals and motivations? Not because she's not kind or not altruistic or doesn't want to experience joy or doesn't want her children to live long and healthy lives for multiple generations or doesn't like giraffes or anything else in the universe, but because practically speaking, she has choices to make every day about her time and her money. And you need to understand the factors that influence this user's experience to understand how to design a product and a company that meets your goals for the universe. You have to be able to do both of those things simultaneously. And unfortunately, what happens to most businesses, going back to the stats that we just talked about, is we get very fixated on our vision of what we wish our users would do or should do, and they have to agree with you. they probably really do agree with you about what they wish they would do and should do. But the wheels fall off when we actually need to make money off of those wishes. And so we end up as small business owners and startups being out a lot of cash because of our like hopes and dreams and wishes, as opposed to finding a way to meet our users' needs in the same time that we end up making money or generating stickiness for our product going forward. So a user-centered approach when it comes to the research and design of a product and company, and that's where we all are right now. We're somewhere in research mode or we're somewhere in design mode, right? We're not, some of us might have a client or two or a customer or two, but we're not yet at scale. Is that right? Someone interrogate my statement if that's not the case. Okay, so while we are in the phase of research and design, which we are right now, our job is to explore the needs, wants, and values of the user. That's the person most closely touching the product from the perspective of the user. From the perspective of the user. Now, many of your products and companies might have a different paying customer than a user. So for example, who paid for these desks? Somebody at the university. I know who it was. Do you know who it was? Procurement officer for the Viterbi School of Engineering. The procurement officer sits in the facilities office. The facilities office is one of the 3 assistant or associate vice dean roles that report to the dean. So the dean, I want to make sure everyone's tracking this. The dean, who has how many degrees in desks? None. Dean probably has many degrees in something related to engineering and has been promoted up to an academic position where she now oversees all the things in the school and may or may not have ever purchased furniture for a classroom. The dean has several direct reports. One of them does student life. One of them does academics, and one of them does facilities. Now the facilities person for the School of Engineering has how many buildings under their purview? What do you think?
All of them.
Yeah, how many are there? Does anyone know? You know?
At least 10.
Yeah, I was gonna guess 6 to 8, and maybe
No,
more.
at least 10 because there's
One off campus. So the facility person has, let's call it 10 buildings. Now, those buildings contain lab equipment and fire escapes and water features and bathrooms and thermostats and computers. So that facilities person has all those things. They're responsible for earthquake drills and lockdowns and making sure that everybody knows what hours the building is open and the key cards when you swiped in and the food service downstairs and the toilet paper running out and graffiti on the walls and those trash cans and these desks. All right, now this family who named this boardroom, someone in development, it's a different office, recruited that family to give money to the school, and that family said, I'd like a room and I'd like it to be a boardroom. And then the development person sprung into action to work with the dean and the facilities person on outfitting this room. And then I bet that the people that named this room had a lot more to say about this furniture than you would want to believe. And I bet that these plants are somehow involved. But I'm fascinated by these plants sitting on windowsills, by the way, totally neither here nor there, but it's fascinating to me. They're really big and beautiful. And these are real plants too.
Wow.
Like someone makes sure that these plants stay vibrant throughout the year. Different lecture, different day. But the point is, the customer, the person who paid for these tables, is a procurement officer that reports up to the facilities person who's working in exchange with the donor in this room. Who's the user? Who's the user of these desks?
Us.
Did you have anything to do with these? Is there anyone here who is 6 feet tall? Exactly. Is there anyone here who's taller than 6 feet tall? Yeah, how are your knees right now?
I think that like it changed it.
Yeah.
It's but then the desk is in.
So I saw you a moment ago. Can you remind me of your name?
And
Kenny? So Kenny had to put his chair all the way basically on the ground, and I noticed that under the table, his knees were kind of like sideways, like this, to fit under these desks. Is there anyone who is significantly under 6 feet tall? And how's this working out for you? It's fine. And did you move your chair? It was pre-arranged for you? How about you? You're fine? Yeah. So all desks everywhere are exactly 30 inches tall. These actually look like they might move. This desk might actually move, which I'm actually delighted by.
No, they just move down.
They go down?
This is the highest ever.
Yeah. I think that's so rad. It's the first time I've ever seen that. And I actually have some questions for the customers about it, the people that paid for it. Because it makes me think, why isn't that the case? This is probably my favorite room that I've ever taught in at USC. For a number of reasons. One, that confidence monitor in the back is at exactly my eye level. Somebody thought about that. Someone's been in another room and decided that accordingly. When I have to spend my entire lecture going like this, it's awkward for everyone. Two, the fact that not only do the tables move up and down, but the chairs move up and down. Three, that you can move the tables and chairs in an infinite number of configurations. And four, that I can move freely and we're not in a stadium is a total delight. And I've now used this classroom multiple ways in the 2 weeks that I've been here, right? We had an experience where we could sit on the floor, where we could move around, we could even run laps if we wanted to. Somebody spent a lot of time, I'm gonna guess, actually thinking how this room would be used. And that person may or may not have been the customer. That's a relatively unusual scenario that I've seen in academic settings. In the spring, I teach in a room where I'm sweating throughout the entire lecture because where the podium is exactly in the corner of a window where the sun is boiling me. But if I close it, it's almost like pitch dark. And one time I was in there and the dean of my school, the business school, came in and said, "Why are all the shades down? We're sitting here in the dark," and then proceeded to open all the shades while all of us like looked at the ground. No one wanting to tell the dean, like, you've literally never been in a room that you've designed. It's like agony teaching in this room. So I remember that this phenomenon, and Trina started us off with one, we've now heard a second one with the pizza, now we're working on a third room with classrooms, is that for some of you, the person who's gonna end up spending money on something, the customer, is very far away from the user. And that often happens the case when we get into a lot of the work that we're doing in this space, where we are assuming our customer to be another business. It's a business to business sale. We might be a supplier for a large scale entity. That an individual entity is spending usually a lot of money on your product, and then it's going to be deployed at scale to all of the users within their network. So I sell something, for example, to the city of Los Angeles, and the city of Los Angeles is going to deploy that with all the residents of Los Angeles. The person who's motivated to buy that product might be resolving one challenge by purchasing your product, but that doesn't mean that the users in their own homes actually share that challenge. It's rare to be in a room like this one where the customer and the user actually seem to sync up pretty nicely. And probably, I hesitate to say this, but I bet I'm right. This room isn't used for students mostly, is it? Yeah, so drop that. So someone designed this room and they use it, which is student classrooms don't usually look like that. Okay, so a user-centered approach explores the needs, wants, and values of the user, the person who's closest to the product, from the perspective of the user. And challenges is another way to say user needs, are articulated from the perspective of the individual using the product or service, not the designer or the company. So that's not your wish and hope for the environment or the company's wish and hope for the environment. Well, that's the user's real-time experience in life in the world, not limited to just this one product. And one that some of us are about to experience next week, if we are flying anywhere, is the phenomenon of airports. I will not give you a whole TED talk on this because you've been there yourself. But next week, if you're traveling, or in the coming weeks after that, if you're traveling, there's seats over here if you want. I would encourage you to look around as you complete your airport experience and notice all of the things that work for a company who spent money on it, or the designer, that go very, very, very poorly for the actual user, you moving through the airport. And one of them has to do with checking bags. One of them has to do with transit throughout the network. One of them has to do with the amount of time that it takes that we have to check in, the gates closing at a certain time. There's any number of things that are not the way that we as users might wish to experience our day, that work really well for someone else with different goals. And there are a couple airlines, and Southwest Airlines in the United States is one of them, that has thought about things from the perspective of the user and thought about how do we bridge that gap? How do I motivate my, how do I understand the motivations? How do I understand the motivations of my user in pursuit of my goals to make money as a company? Can anyone think of something that Southwest does that really understands the motivations of the user? What do you think?
Free checking bags,
Great, and what does that do for someone?
for pay for checking your bag.
Well, what it does, you might not know this, is it eliminates that dance of people not wanting to pay to check their bag. And so they're trying to shove everything they own in an overhead bin, which never fits. There's never enough bins because airplanes were built and designed before the regulations that took place after 9/11 and the increase of fuel. So there are no airlines that have enough room for all the passengers to have an overhead spot for their carry-on. So airlines assume that people are going to check their bags. When a bag costs $70 to check and there isn't enough room for everyone and everyone stands there shoving things while someone's going, take the first available bin, please take the first available bin. I beseech you, the first available bin. And then if you're like in group F or whatever, you end up having to gate check your bag anyway, because there was never enough room for your bag. Southwest avoids that entirely by saying we understand the motivation of the customer, we're just going to make bags check for free. And then we will not have that dance, because you know what that dance causes? Flight delays. Very expensive. Letting people elbow their way into spots that don't exist overhead. What else does Southwest do that understands the motivations of its user? Yeah.
24 check-in 24 hours before departure.
Yeah,
So you board in order of your check-in.
that's right.
And to me, also kind of like, it's like a gamified experience.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I check in early, I get a better seat.
Yeah.
Right, and so it understands the motivations of its customer, not just in terms of that I'd like autonomy and where I sit, but also the game experience that a lot of customers of Southwest identify with. Yeah, and we could go on like that. There's a number of, it's a very user-centered experience. Now, does that mean that Southwest is like whimsical and just does like whatever anybody wants? Does it mean that there's no like structure or routine or order, that they don't make money? No, but their approach explores the needs, wants, and values of the user. It essentially believes the user. So Brene Brown, some of you might be familiar with Brene Brown. She's a researcher, a writer, a social worker at a university in Texas. Has written a number of mainstream publications as well. Brene Brown says that in order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it, and not how you imagine their experience to be. You might have this experience in the world right now where people are very quick to believe that their own lived experience is full of nuance and complexity, but other people's lived experience is flat, misguided, and definitely needs an Instagram slider to educate them on their choices. That's not the case. All of us have experiences that are rich and deep and predicated by our own lives and our own loves. And the way that we spend a lot of time thinking about things and thinking about our choices, other people do too. We spend a lot of time thinking about our purchases and how they resonate to us and whether or not it's worth it. So does everyone else. So in order to be a great designer, we need to believe people. We need to not be so quick to discount someone else's experience as an outlier. We need to talk to and connect with enough users and look at their actual lives, not their opinions on our product, but their actual life. To have enough data to really understand what someone else looks like, and then potentially make the necessary changes on our bright, beautiful baby of a product or an idea to incorporate in someone else's lived experience, not try and change someone else's mind or change someone else's experience to convince them to buy the thing that we think is really perfect. We must really like our own ideas. But we have a harder time appreciating that someone else's idea might not be wrong, it might just be literally they don't want our thing. I'm like deep in this week. People trying to like talk me out of my ideas, and I'm like, it might just be the case that we disagree. Might actually be the case that I have all the information in front of me and I have a different lived experience than you. And that's not particular to anyone's scenario, just something that feels like really heightened in the universe right now. So empathy we talk about in a user-centered approach is recognizing the gaps in our awareness. Most of us have spent a tremendous amount of time, a tremendous amount of research getting to where we are today. And so when we think about a user-centered approach, what we want to think about is, what do I not know? We want to go into user research excited to learn things we don't know. I'd like to find something out that I don't know right now. Maybe I have a really great grasp on the IP or the chemistry of my particular product. Maybe I spent a lot of time on this patent, but my product is meant to be used in a user's home. And I haven't been in a lot of other people's houses, actually. I've been in my friends' houses, but I've not been in a lot of strangers' houses. So I don't actually know how my product would function in someone else's house. Maybe I have a really, really, really brilliant idea about how corporations should work, but I myself have actually never run a multinational corporation. I think I need to really sit down with the procurement teams of like 20 or 30 multinational corporations and ask me to walk them through how they make decisions about purchasing products. And I'm going to look for the things I don't know. I'm going to be obsessed with insisting that there are things I don't know, in fact. And when I hear something that feels really foreign to me, like, wow, I had no idea, I'm going to literally high-five myself. I just found something that contradicts with my own experience of this. I'm thrilled. Now I have information I didn't have before. And in this way, a user-centered approach can also be really useful as it relates to inequity approaches. Which is that this slide comes from a group called the Equity Design Collaborative, which is one of several different organizations that I think does really powerful work in the space of equity and design. And it came from a seminar that they did a couple of years back. But a user-centered design framework, if done well, if not just done performatively, really requires us to cede power to our users, in fact, in the design process, to believe that someone else's expertise of their own life is just as valuable to us as our own university experience or our own lab experience. We might know better the molecular framework of something or the coding framework of something, but nobody knows their own life as well as their own user does. It also means that we make the invisible visible. Sometimes we have to name things that are weird or uncomfortable to talk about. Just say things out loud about it. How might someone be disincentivized to participate in my product that I don't even realize, for example? Because if I want as many people as possible to buy my product, wouldn't I care about that? Wouldn't I care about those gaps? To make my product as interesting and accessible to as many people in the universe as possible, even if their experiences might look a little bit different than mine, even if the countries that they're operating in might operate in a different way than mine. And finally, it requires us to, or it asks us to design at the margins. What do I mean by design at the margins? Think of a user population that is typically not included in the design process. If you can make your product work for that user, it'll work for a lot of other people as well. For example, after I had my first child, my kids are 13 and 10, and I live right by campus, campus. I was walking around with my daughter in the stroller, and I realized that like almost every curb I came to just like falls off. Like I could not actually operate a stroller in any sort of reasonable way to navigate in the neighborhood. I tried to walk to the grocery store and like put my stuff in the bottom of the stroller, and I like couldn't pick it up with the baby and the groceries each time I went to the curb. And I thought, gosh, if we had sidewalks that were operable on wheels, we'd all still be able to walk on them. So designing for people that in this case have a different relationship to sidewalks than I do, like that operate by wheels, doesn't make the sidewalks any less accessible or interesting for me. It just means we can all participate in the sidewalk life. So when we think about design at the margins, think about a user that you might not be thinking of right now, who you'd love it if they would spend time on their product, and look at your product from their perspective. Designing at the margins also includes things like what happens to these biodegradable sugar boxes in the rain. In the rain is a margin scenario in Los Angeles, but if you can design something that won't be destroyed by the rain, it'll probably work on all the other days too. Yeah? So that's what we mean by that. Okay. So we led with this session by talking about the experience of, we have courses, we have these lectures on the day that we have them because it works for the design team, the teaching team. My sense is that this happens with like a lot of things on campus. That like it made a lot of sense to someone who designed it. They had their reasons for doing it that way, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to the actual user. Does anyone use the duo push situation here?
Everyone.
We all have to.
Has anyone had the experience of like losing your phone and then being locked out of your entire life academically?
Yes,
You've had that
yes,
experience?
very recently.
What happened?
Oh my gosh, I panicked. I was actually locked out for a week.
So can we name this? Because I've had this experience. Like I literally can't do my actual job. So I had a day where I just left my phone at home. And was like, I can't believe that I literally can't teach. Because I left my phone at home. Like I can't believe that this process has created a scenario where my phone, which I hate having with me while teaching, has to be with me while teaching. And Jasmine has had that experience. I had a student who left her phone in the bathroom of a concert at SoFi Stadium and like couldn't do the rest of the semester. Like couldn't afford another phone, couldn't get into any of her apps. She went through, I walked with her to the IT office and I was like, surely we have a plan B. There was no plan B. We ended up buying her a phone so that she could finish the semester. It was like outrageous. She couldn't submit anything on Blackboard. It was wild, right? Has anyone had any sort of experience of this nature? A basement classroom, that was another one of mine. I taught in the basement of Fertitta and I couldn't ever log in to the screen because there was no Wi-Fi downstairs. And the IT department told me, how do you just remember to refresh and download a code before you go down there? And I was like, well, you remember to do all the things for all the things. All the things. So I don't think that the designers of Duo had malice. I think that the designers of Duo were hired by the university to respond to what challenge? What was Duo created for? Security. Yeah. They were asked to make the university impermeable to hackers and people that would compromise student data and professors' data and all the data, right? So nobody thinks they were like trying to do a terrible thing. It just turns out that their solution, which probably really achieves the goals of the product and made the customer, who's the customer who bought Duo, the university met those goals while actually creating, I'm going to be hyperbolic here, absolute chaos for actual users of this particular product. And the people who designed it have never, they have not been tasked with the use cases. They have never had to use it to log in to teach a class. They have not been sitting on an airplane so excited that they're finally going to grade all their papers on the 11-hour flight to London. Can't log in the air. They never had that experience, and they never will have that experience. But I bet, and I fantasize about this, y'all. I spent a lot of time fantasizing about this. I bet if they did it one time once, they would fix it. I bet if they ever had the experience of leaving their phone in a bathroom at an airport or at a stadium or whatever the case is, they would absolutely be able to work on that. It doesn't mean they have to do away with the entire product. or conclude that it's like trash or they don't deserve to live, they would probably just find a workaround. Because that's what intelligent, creative people like yourself are able to do. So I want us to hold these two things as we work through our workshop today. I want us to hold one, you're all coming in with ideas right now. There's no part of me that makes you think like scrap your idea and start over. And I want you to think about the ways that you might be limited right now in your experience of your actual user, who your actual user is, what their day-to-day life is like right now. How are they touching your product right now? How do you hope they'll touch your product right now? And what can you do to literally walk through that user's life to find out the things that you don't know right now? That's my hope for you as we spend the rest of this year together. Let's get to this one. Okay, so a user-centered approach, we've talked about focuses on the user. We hold extreme user empathy, which is defined as recognizing the gaps in our awareness. That's me quoting myself with those quote marks. We move from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. We move from a mindset of saying, like, crap, I just got feedback about my product, so I guess I'm gonna throw it all away. To instead thinking, how do I respond to the feedback that I just got by generating more creative approaches to resolve the challenge that I just heard about? And for that reason, we have to prototype rapidly. I get feedback on something and I think, what about this? What about this? I'll try it again, I'll try it again. We don't have to do a whole like beta test to pilot something. We don't have to announce it. We can just casually try it a few users at a time and see how it lands. We delight in iteration in that regard. We love trying new things. We love trying to think, how can I make this experience better and better and better for the user? Because feedback is a gift. I'm also quoting myself. This infinity sign that I like to use is whenever we find ourselves tightened, the pinch in the middle, we try and give ourselves more options to move through that rather than less. So when we hear a no, we think to ourselves, what if I changed this then? And that what if possibility will open up possibility for us. And then we might try all kinds of things and realize that it's too much. And then we want to narrow that again. And we want to go really deeply in something and interrogate the heck out of it. And then make a decision and then go really deeply into that and interrogate the heck out of that and try it again and again and again. We kind of want to be obsessed that way with possibility, rather than getting fixated on one thing and believing that's the only way to do it. And if we do that enough times, it starts to look like an infinity sign. So from the narrowness, we kind of force ourselves to see possibility. Is there any other way of looking at this? Is there any other way of responding to this? Is there any, I have a product that works on smartphones and now I'm actually realizing that there's a trillion products in the Apple Store and no one is ever going to find my product on their own. Is there any other way to deliver this product? Is there any other way, any other platform? Not, okay, then I guess we'll just have to advertise more. When we encounter a challenge, we think, is there any other way to respond other than just this one way that I've fixated on? I'm gonna pause here. We've covered a lot of material. What are y'all thinking about when you hear this? What is coming to mind? What surprises you? Please.
I'm thinking like this abstract idea of like prototyping and do everything rapid, but I'm thinking of the gap like between this abstract idea and the real product. Like we are building things with this idea, but we got stuck and we don't know how to move on. And we know this idea of rapid, and now we just feel stuck.
Great. So in a few minutes, we're gonna do some practical work with this with you and your particular product. Would that be useful to you? Great. Other questions or comments? All right. So as we transition to thinking about how to make this practical for you, and remind me your name? Bowen. Bowen? Yeah. Thank you, Bowen. So Bowen is teeing us right up. The two areas that I want you to be thinking about for your user. The first things first, you have to know who your user is. Who is actually going to be using your product, not paying for it, but using it. I want you to know And if you don't already know this, we're gonna talk about how to find out. What challenges and needs does your user experience in their whole life, not related to the product? Okay, so if you're designing a pizza box, your user is not walking around thinking about their pizza challenges. Your user is thinking about their life. What are the challenges and needs that Trina is experiencing in Trina's day-to-day life that don't have anything to do with pizza? This part is critical. The biggest mistake that I see startups make is they assume that all users out there in the world are actually walking around thinking about their actual product. So somebody designed this water bottle for me. I don't ever think about water until I'm thirsty. I am not laying in my bed daydreaming the perfect water bottle. I only know that I want water when I want water. The whole rest of my day, what am I doing? What are the challenges and needs in Abby's life? Do you have any thoughts? You don't know me that well, but I've given you some breadcrumbs along the way. What do you think I think about during the day? I do not think about sustainability, but I love that about you.
Okay.
What do you think about my kids?
What are their needs?
So this morning, while I was getting ready to come to class, I was really looking forward to being on campus early, to give myself plenty of time. My daughter's school called to let me know that she had a migraine, and could I please come right away to give her Tylenol? They can't dispense Tylenol without me there. Daughter's school is in Hollywood. It's 45 minutes each way. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about this morning. I don't think about work when I'm not at work. I regret to inform everyone here. But I did get a text message from a student today who let me know that she won't be attending class because she had a conflict come up. And she wanted me to right away send her the recording from class. So I did stop what I was doing to do that. It took me about 7 minutes to log in. And where was I at the time that I got that text from the student? It's in car. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the car. That's a need or a challenge in my life. What else do I think about during the day, do you think?
Cheese.
Did enjoy cheese. Did enjoy the cheese on that pizza. Cheese is gonna make me really ill. Yeah, I think about my food needs because I'm vegetarian. I, as a rule, don't eat dairy and I'm gluten-free. So I did spend a good bit of time this morning mapping my food needs for the day and sticking a frozen burrito in the pocket of my book bag in the very likely event that I would not be able to eat the lunch, the session I'd be leading before I had to go teach this afternoon. So I do spend a lot of time thinking about food. What's another need or challenge that I might experience in my day?
How to avoid traffic?
Yeah, parking. I'm very certain right now that I'm getting a ticket for my car. Because I parked in the garage at Downey Way and I thought I could do that text to thing, but it doesn't have it there. So I'm looking forward to the $60 parking ticket that I'll get. 80. Cool. Because I was already on this side of campus and I couldn't get through to the other side of campus to park my car where I usually park to be here on time. See also my kid and their migraine.
Parking target, underground parking for 2 hours.
100%. I could have done that if I didn't have to be here in 12. Why did I have to be here at 12? Instead of at 10 where I usually park? You see where this is going, okay? Now, in the course of all that, I did grab my water bottle and I did want to fill it up before I got here, but I can't fill it up because it is a problem if I fill it up before I get in the room. So I held my breath and I hoped that there would be a way to fill up my water bottle in this room, which is really lucky because that was a real crapshoot. We didn't think that was gonna happen. So once I got here after all of that, it did occur to me that I should probably have a different water bottle. But I will not do anything with that thought. Because the other needs that I articulated are more significant. What you should know though, if you're a water bottle company though, is not think to myself, how can I make a water bottle that works for Abby's water bottle needs, but think, how do I make a water bottle that works for a working professional mom on the go who parks in a very different place than where her responsibilities are, teaches in 5 different rooms, and also needs a water bottle with a straw in it that can sit on the counter and look reasonable and not like a child drinking out of a thermos in front of all of her students as she teaches throughout the way. That's how you should think about me. I want you to think about your user in terms of their challenges and needs as a human in the world, not limited to your product, as a human in the world. Then you think about how does my product fit into their routines, habits, behaviors, and values that they are doing right now. I do have a hydration need. And if you know something about me and my schedule and how I move, that I'm in a car, see this part, that I'm on the go, see this part, that I want to be a professional who has a certain aesthetic in front of my students, see this part. Okay, then you can design something for me that works for all of those things. If you start with the water bottle and then you try and jam it into my life, I may or may not grow attached to it, buy it, even spend money on it. Start with me and my needs first and use everything you know about me and my needs to construct or adapt something that works for me. And that's going to be a tighter product that I'm going to spend money on. I'm going to say this one more time for Bowen's questions and other questions. How do you practically apply this? Take your eye off your own product. Fix your eye on your user. Spend all your time getting to know the life of your user. What are your users' routines, habits, behaviors, values? How do they talk about themselves in the world? How do they present themselves in the world? How do they show up in the world? How do they think about themselves in the world? And match your product or company innovation towards that portrait that the user holds of themselves and how they actually live and spend their time. And you can do that really specifically. This is a really neat campaign. It's actually a campaign that was designed by some students that were working with the LA County Board of Health. And the LA County Board of Health was interested in, from their perspective, the issue that users in East LA, the city of East LA, had significantly higher rates of cervical cancer than women in other similar communities. Significantly higher rates of cervical cancer than women in other communities. Cervical cancer is almost entirely preventable. If you have regular annual pelvic exams, cervical exams, you can test for irregular cells. The treatment and catching of those irregular cells can almost entirely present cervical cancer. So the County of the County of Los Angeles Board of Health, or Health Department rather, was interested in their mind, a campaign to convince people to get cervical exams. Now I want to pause here. If you don't have a cervix, you're just going to have to hang with me for a second. But if you do have a cervix, guesses about why the women of East LA were not getting annual exams. Just casual guesses. What do you think?
Insurance.
Pardon?
No health insurance.
Could be no health insurance, although there were lots of county places where you can get them for free.
No,
What'd you say?
No time.
Many said no time. They had hourly wage jobs, and if they took off time, but the no time was really significant. It was less to do about time and more about the amount of time they had to wait in the waiting rooms. Why else? We're missing some way obvious ones.
They don't even know that they need to.
Interesting, not that, but an interesting instinct. No, everybody understood the significance of a cervical exam. Interesting transportation. This is incredible. What's happening? Cost, really interesting assumption.
Bad experience with doctor.
Thank you. Has anyone ever had a cervical exam? I have. Let's be honest. Did you love it? No. They're awful. Isn't that nothing but time? The people of East LA are not any different than women anywhere else. They are awful. It is awful to get a cervical exam. It is dehumanizing. It is humiliating. It is uncomfortable. It's often operated by someone who's using tools that were designed literally to experiment on women without their consent, women of color. Please, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I have never looked forward to a cervical exam in my life. And I have all the time, all the money, and all the health insurance. I just want to put a pin on this for a second because it's super significant to what we're talking about today. We all immediately, I don't want to look at anyone here, assume that the reason why other women didn't want to get a cervical exam was anything other than because they're terrible. We came up with a whole lot of reasons that had to do with people's motivations, their education, their income, as opposed to like, they're not great. So the designers here set out to try and understand, how do you make an experience that's not so great, a little less not so great? And they knew that they weren't gonna be able to change the actual exam, unfortunately, because that would require a lot of structural work that was not up to them. But they had a lot of other tools at their disposal. So they spoke with the women in the community about their closest relationships. Right? If the experience of having a physical exam is alienating and uncomfortable, where are the moments in your life that are comfortable? And that's what they learned about. And they learned that the women really enjoyed friendships with other women, especially 2 or 3 women, especially sisters, aunts, cousins. They learned that women in the community communicate primarily through like based texting platforms, like WhatsApp and GroupMe-esque platforms. And that they love talking on the phone with their 2 or 3 best girlfriends, that they do not talk to dudes about their lady parts, ever. Not husbands, not partners, not friends, not brothers, not doctors. And they also learn that people travel often by buses and on sidewalks. They're traveling by foot and they're on buses. That they get their nails painted or paint their nails regularly. And when asked the question, parenthetically, if you don't look forward to an annual exam, what do you look forward to every year? The women said Christmas and the annual blooming of the jacaranda tree. Has anyone lived in LA long enough to see jacaranda trees bloom? Can you describe what they look like?
Pretty.
What do they look like?
They're purple, like all the leaves turn into like purple small flowers and they just like fall. And it got it, it's like a little like flower thing. going on.
Yeah.
Almost like a cherry blossom, but just
Yes, very much like cherry blossom, but purple. Okay, so jacaranda trees bloom in Los Angeles once or twice a year. It's pretty dramatic. If you haven't been here yet for it, I look forward to it. So the women asked the question. Remember, this is our formula. Challenges and needs and routines, habits, behaviors, and values. So they asked the question, how might we use the annual blooming of the jacaranda tree, getting my nails done regularly / painting my nails myself, relationships with 2 or 3 other women who I really trust, and traveling by bus and on foot on sidewalks. Those are the things that are happening in the life of the user, to inspire creative approaches to the challenge of it is no fun getting an annual exam. You tracking that? That an annual exam carries with it shame, fear, sadness, and physical pain. How might we use the annual blooming of the jacaranda tree, getting my nails done or painting my own nails, my relationships with 2 or 3 other women that I really trust, going on buses and walking on sidewalks on foot to inspire creative approaches to the challenge of the sadness, fear, anger, and physical pain that I feel getting an annual exam. We seen that so far? And they came up with a campaign that the county adopted. It's been wildly successful. Of the following, it's called Es Tiempo. And the campaign, you can barely see it on the bus bench. The campaign says in Spanish, it's easy, it's important, it's time. Es fácil, es importante, es tiempo. It's easy, it's important, it's time. And it reminds women every year at the blooming of the jacaranda trees to get their annual exam. It links something pleasant, the blooming of the jacaranda trees, with something that I might not otherwise choose to think about. Because remember, all women know that it's a good idea to get the annual exam, they just don't really look forward to it. Right, so this is not an education campaign, it's necessary. It was just a, let's see if we can sweeten this a little bit campaign. They did a paid partnership with OPI Nail. They created 3 lavender nail colors. I went on end caps in East LA. With this campaign in the Rite Aids in Walgreens, I believe. There was a bus mapping system, this bus shelter map, which is kind of shaped like a jacaranda tree, identified which clinics were open after hours. We heard time earlier, and would be staffed by women who speak Spanish to give the exams. And there were these pedals that would go on the floor when you get off the bus stop, these like vinyl sidewalk decals that would quietly and seamlessly, without you having to talk to other dudes or dudes at all, tell you where the clinic was after you get off the bus. This was a campaign that was steeped deeply in the user experience. It did not ignore the county's interest in lowering the rates of cervical cancer. High altruism, right? But it came from a place of understanding the user's actual motivations, what feels good to the user. And leveraging those things for creative solutions. Leveraging what's going on. Bowen asked this question earlier, how do we apply this practically? Last year, we had a student in this cohort who had invented a waterless shampoo. She was inspired by, does anyone have those like toothpaste tablets? Like this big, and they're solid and they come in a jar and you put them on the toothbrush and you wet them. So a lot of people really have gotten into these recently. And she was really interested in this idea of like a jar full of toothpaste pills, basically, that when you wet them, it suds. And she said, I wonder if we could do the same thing for shampoo. It's waterless, I'm already in the shower, there's plenty of water. Why couldn't I like take something and like put it on my hands and get it wet, suds it into my hair? It was cool. She worked really hard on it. She had patents on the technology. She was certain that this was gonna change the world. After this session that y'all are in right now, and an exercise that we're gonna do in a minute, she started asking questions a la STMFO. Well, it can't be the case that I actually just have to like educate my users on how like profoundly wasteful it is to have a bottle of water in my shower. Shampoo is mostly water, that's what we're tracking so far. Because most humans, even if I tell them that, are still gonna keep buying shampoo. And she just started asking people, in this case, women, tell me some hair stories. When do you have a great hair day? What does a bad hair day feel like? Show me some photos of times when you really loved your hair. Do you have any photos of times you didn't love your hair? And she started collecting hair stories, because that's the user's experience. The user's experience is not walking around going, I wonder how I can save more water on my shampoo. Oh, thank you. You've created a product so I can save water on shampoo. Thank you. I've been waiting for your product. Because if it was the user's experience, they would have already found her product. So instead, she had to find out from people, hair function in your life. What does that look like for you? And what she found out was most people designated whether or not it was a good day generally based on their hair. People, especially in this case, people who identified as women, but people who had long hair, planned their entire weekend schedule around when they were going to wash their hair. Most of us are going, yeah. But isn't that incredible that this person who identified as a woman as well hadn't been thinking about that because she was thinking about her beautiful innovation. She was unable to see her own experience. Okay, so she came back and she pivoted her entire concept about this product around great hair days start with her product. She put the benefit of the product front and center. She had to make sure that her product was competitive with every other specialty hair product out there before she could even talk about it being waterless. Because most people are attached to their hair products for reasons that don't have anything to do with the chemical composition of water or not. They have to do with how does it make my hair look at the end of the day. So she knew that if she could make people's hair look awesome, they would actually didn't care what the ingredients were. And that changed everything for her. From a perspective that this was about environmental security and safety, which maybe resonated for like some people who go camping with this product, but was not particularly widespread, to the widespread audience of people who care a lot about their hair. Okay, so this is what I want to ask us to do. All right, I want us to think about our own product now, and we're going to spend some time, a little bit of time, like in the weeds on our own products. Some of you have products, some of you have companies, and you can, same question for all of you. I want you to jot down for your company, who is the user? It's the person who is touching your product. Who is the customer who's paying for the product? And then what user need is being met? You're gonna take a first pass at this, but we're gonna hit it a couple times in the course of the next half an hour. What user need is being met? See if you can take a couple minutes and answer that. Then we're gonna talk about what you wrote down.
Oh, I think you just bring that back.
I'm gonna play 4 minutes on the clock right now, just to see what you can jot down in 4 minutes. Yes, yeah. Whatever you. So you can. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's good how I say it out.
Creating it for like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Customer care. That's the one that I've already given so far.
Not my.
Somebody else paid. So there's a another example would be
Career chair thing. It was so nice talking to the other getting good company.
take a 1 minute and I'll come together. And you can do a little.
Oh, that's.
That's what you're.
Would anyone be willing to share with the rest of us your institution? When willing to start us off, and I'll help workshop if you're not really sure, but you don't mind volunteering, I can help you as well. Yes, Jack.
Our users are children ages 5 to 10, living in South Central Los Angeles, experiencing adverse childhood experiences, so ACEs, with busy parents. So user customer is actually Los Angeles. So we're looking to leverage unused parks and spaces.
So your product will be sold to the county of Los Angeles?
Yes.
And then the people using it will be children,
Yeah.
right? And what is the user need?
Innocent play, emotional regulation, and childhood development.
Great, so let me ask, Jasmine is so good to me and is volunteering to go first. She knows that I'll play a little bit. Are those children sitting around thinking, I wish I had some emotional regulation? Mommy, please let me out so I can have emotional regulation.
They're looking for fun play.
They're looking for fun.
Yeah.
They wanna have fun. Their parents' need is probably emotional regulation of the children.
Safe place.
But the kids are like, I wanna play in places cool. Yeah? Do y'all see that shift? Most of us don't talk about ourselves from a place of scarcity. We talk about ourselves in terms of what we want in the world, not what we don't want. Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. Thanks for being willing to go first. Is someone else willing to share? Please, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, our user, should I tell you?
So I wanna hear about the idea at all. I just wanna hear about the user.
Okay, so our user is the civilian whose house has been surrounded by the PFM landmines. And they are hard to go outside because it's unsafe. Yes. And so the customer will be the user, the civilians themselves live in the house, or it's volunteers or government who buy the things and deliver to them.
Great, so these are two different customers, actually.
Yeah,
I'm gonna ask someone to name one. Who is gonna be buying your product? Who's gonna spend their money on it?
I would say probably civilians.
Civilians are gonna buy it for their own homes?
Yeah, it's like, I feel like, if we ask government to purchase, I feel like that would be like much more than.
I'm thinking of government, so
You're thinking government, okay,
Yeah.
hang with us, guys, okay, so. One of you says civilians, one of you says government, that's fine, but the person using it is gonna be the civilian in their home, right? And what user need is being met, what does this user want in life?
they want to make sure that if any place they're in step on doesn't have line, because they don't.
Yeah,
know.
roll that back a little bit, what do they want like in life, like Jasmine's user wants to play. What does your user want?
I guess like freedom to like, to walk around and then.
I wanna leave my house whenever I want.
Yeah,
I wanna know that my children are safe leaving the house whenever I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold that. That's the most important part. If you can tell your user, by buying our product, you get to leave the house whenever you want, they will buy your product, and it doesn't matter what the product is. If you know that's the user need, your product can be made out of like fairy dust, magic, grass, zebra hides, unicorn horns, it doesn't matter. You don't need to tell me about what the product is for me to know that if I spend money on this product, I can leave my house and all my limbs will be intact. And that's the difference between a user need and from a user perspective and from a designer or product perspective. Yeah, thank you very much for being willing to go. There was another hand, was someone's hand back there? Yeah, you wanna go ahead?
So our users are like across industries, different kinds of industries who want to
do like circular economy or do like regeneration of their waste or do like waste management and life cycle analysis of their product. Yeah. That we made is like helping them build a more better business for the environment. Waste regeneration.
Yeah.
Talking about that, doing their life cycle analysis.
What is an example of someone who would care about that? Like, what's their job title?
I mean, I think the CEOs would care about it because there's like an increasing pressure from the government to become more sustainable.
Are there financial penalties if they don't?
There's no financial penalty, but there's financial, like they give more of money if you're like sustainable. They will give, like with the EV industries and stuff, the governments are more willing to give them more money and solar businesses that.
So you are hoping that a CEO, that's the customer, will spend money on your product in the hopes that it will make them more money?
If I might add,
Yeah.
I just wanna add a title, I would say the facilities manager who is supposed to dispose of the garbage, irrespective of the process. I am someone who is in
Yeah.
charge of disposing of the waste, and right now I don't have a fixed guideline of doing it,
Right.
and it's a pain for me
Right.
to do it.
What is your name?
Srinivas.
Srinivas?
Yeah.
I love that you just put yourself right into the I statement of the facilities manager. That's such a great strategy. You're saying, I'm the facilities manager and this is what my day looks like. That's a great hack to really understanding your user. So I think you're right on the money, but that's your user. But that guy or girl is probably not have a lot of purchasing power.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay, so the user is my facilities manager, whose job it is to dispose of waste, awesome, and the paying customer is the CEO. So your group has this added challenge of trying to understand, how do I make my facility manager's day better? Literally better, how do I make the experience of waste not awful? And why would someone else pay for that for me, and it's not altruism? But CEOs with tremendous and profound respect to CEOs rarely spend a lot of time identifying what makes their employees' manual tasks better. So that's gonna be your job as a group to think about that. Thank you for volunteering. One more group before we move on. Anyone else willing to also want to volunteer this? Okay, so these are, I'm skipping the immersive experience in lieu of letting you leave earlier, I decided, okay. So, Bowen asked earlier, how do we make this practical for you? And these are like Professor Fifer Mandell's 5 hacks for a user-centered approach to customer insights and user insights. And it works both for customers and users. It's a little bit different for customers because they don't often care as much about how to achieve their goals as the user do. And for users, like we heard in the last 2 cases, their day-to-day experience is significant, but they might actually not be the one that's actually spending money on the product. So these are 5 questions that I would start with literally everyone that you speak with in your user profile. So the first thing that you need to find out, and can you remind me your name?
Call me Debbie.
Do you want me to call you Debbie?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Debbie, had a moment of actually trying to figure out, I'm not really sure who's gonna buy this or use this. I've come all this way, I've gotten into a competition, I've entered it, I've spent a lot of time talking about this, but actually I don't really know. That's your first task. In order to be a user researcher, you have to know who your user is. So step 1, who do you imagine is gonna be using your product when push comes to shove? I had a student years ago who was working on an incredible product, I'll spare you the details, but it had to do with saving the lives of animals from shelters. She was really interested in saving the lives of animals from shelters. Ultimately, the person who touched her product were volunteers who worked in shelters. The experience of the volunteer who worked in shelters is dramatically different than the person who's sitting in an office somewhere in downtown LA, managing all of the shelters in Los Angeles, who doesn't actually interface with kittens, who's having to make a decision about spending thousands of dollars on a platform to roll out in all the shelters in LA. This student's life and the life of the product changed dramatically when she spent time on bullet point number 5 on here. She went to the shelters, she sat with volunteers all day, and she began to understand what a typical day in that user's life looks like. Okay, so these are the kinds of questions that I would ask. When was the last time you, this last group, took out the trash? Can you tell me about it? When was the last time you felt so afraid to leave your house that you decided to stay home? Can you tell me about that? When was the last time you took your kids to the playground? What was that like? Okay, you want to hear everything you can about it. What was a great experience you had with doing that? What was a terrible experience you had with doing that? And why? Can you tell me why? I like to ask people who are 3 people or 2 people or 1 person, it doesn't really matter, that you communicate with, and how do you communicate with them? Why do I do that? Because it helps me understand habits, behaviors, and routines in the user's life. A person who communicates primarily over email, WhatsApp, instant messenger, Facebook Messenger, on my phone, on my iPad, those are actually entirely different users. Do I communicate regularly with my parents? Do I communicate regularly with my students? Do I communicate regularly with my best friend? It helps you understand how your user makes decisions about how to spend their time and money. And then a big one that I would ask every single human being you talk to, can you tell me about a typical day in your life? Walk me through a typical day in your life. Because you want to know, is this user in the car? Is this user walking back and forth across campus? Does this user have a lot of meetings, not a lot of meetings? Does this user have any autonomy in their day? Is this user in front of a screen? Is this user in front of a catalog? My very strong guess about these, waste receptacles on campus, those like 3 waste receptacle things all around campus, is that the person who designed that had not said to a student, can you tell me about a typical day in your life? And would have a very different experience appreciating how to best minimize waste on campus as it relates to student life, which I think is their goal, if they actually knew what a typical day in a student's life looked like. Strong gut instinct on that, maybe prove me wrong. Okay, so these are 5 questions that I would ask. And I would get in the habit of asking them and never, ever, ever talking about your product. You already know what your product is. So your job is to hear information about your user and then apply it to your own product development. That's your job. That's your job. Okay, I find that an empathy map can be really helpful in helping you deduce the information that you have about your user and recognizing gaps in it. So I actually want to ask you to take a couple minutes and see if you can fill this out. Okay, you can just take some notes on your own page, and I want to give you like 7 minutes to start to do this. An empathy map, and this is called an empathy map. This is just this, I wrote a textbook, and this just came out of my textbook, but empathy maps are everywhere. You can find this anywhere. This is just one that I happen to have made for my students over the years. I want you to fill out the empathy map as follows. Think about your user, the user that you just articulated a moment ago in the slide. Who is your user? And then you can fill in some detail about that user in the rectangle in the middle. Then I want you to see if you can answer these questions that are on the perimeter of the empathy map. So here, what messages does your user hear about themselves from the world around them? Literally. What do they hear about them and their experience? If I was filling this out, let's say that I was filling this out for undergrads at the Marshall School of Business at USC. What do they hear about themselves? You should really get a job. Time is running out to get an internship. If you're not in the right clubs, you're never going to get hired. If you don't live in the right place on campus, your whole life is destroyed. You're really lucky to get in here. et cetera, et cetera. What do they see on a daily basis? They see pretty attractive buildings. They see University Village shops and stores. They see bicycles, they see skateboards. They see rundown apartment buildings off campus. They see their screens, they see their phones, they see their laptops, their Macintosh computers. Those are some of the things they see. How do they talk about themselves in public? How do they present themselves in public? They say things like, I'm really passionate about marketing. LOL. What do they spend their time doing on a regular basis? Literally. Not like in a cliche way, but like literally. Spend their time walking. They spend their time texting friends. They spend their time on Snapchat. I don't know. I'm not a student, making things up. What are their fears, frustrations, obstacles, worries? What are their wants, needs, dreams, ambition? Okay, so I want you to take like 7 minutes now and start to fill this out for your user, please. So you'll want something you can write on.
Yeah.
Maybe, no, I know.
Like today.
What do you see?
They were trying to sell me a.
What's the need to like us when we stuff.
Yeah, I met,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what?
Lot your ceremony. That's really naked.
When did you guys council?
Their audience, and probably
Also
always Thursday, always holidays.
We have our own work. Because of interview.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Well, that male shape, like somebody was trying to.
They say right now their main focus is on rebuilding, specifically rebuilding education centers. Getting prosthetics. Yeah. They just say like, but I'll have a friend like.
This waste disposal by my.
Like restaurant, and also they like still games.
Figure out another. I'd love to hear from some folks about this experience for you. For how many people was it the first time that you've completed an empathy map for your user? Is it anyone's first time doing this? Most people? Maybe we'll do this in reverse. Give me a thumbs up if you had previously completed an empathy map for your user. Great. Did you find that your experience doing it now is different than last time you did it? How is it different this time?
I think the part about just like knowing that they're not thinking about the product.
Yeah, shifting the lens away from a particular of your products, look at their core more broadly. Yeah, thank you for offering that. What were others' experience of this? What parts did you find easier to fill out? What parts did you find more difficult to fill out? Let's start with easier. What were some of the easier parts to fill out?
Where people spend their most time.
What do you think made that easier for you?
Because for us, the users are like people we see on a daily basis and we interact on a daily basis, so we know they like that.
Yeah.
Kind of have an
So
idea.
that felt a little easier because you could relate to it.
Relate to it.
Yeah. Did others have that same experience? Is that easier for people too? How did you spend their time? What was harder for people to complete?
Go ahead. I think it's like to say, how did it talk about themselves?
Yeah.
Because the people who are our user and the people who suffer, and it less likely that, like a journalist or a reporter will go there and ask them. Yeah, so it's very hard to compare realistic,
This is great. So this is really interesting. So Bowen is sharing that I understand that people are suffering, but because they're not interviewed by journalists, I don't know how they talk about themselves. And I think this disconnect is also captured by what our last group said. My guess is that the folks talk about themselves in a very different way than a journalist would be able to identify anyway, because a journalist cares about their suffering or not, but doesn't necessarily see the fullness of their humanity. So my guess is that your user probably talks about themselves like this. I'm a mom. I'm doing my best. I'm getting through day to day. And they probably don't spend a lot of time talking about anything that a journalist might care about or not care about, which is being hard to think about. That most of us in our everyday lives think about ourselves as much larger than any one perceived challenge that we experience. Like, for example, the way that I primarily identify in almost any setting that I'm in, even professional settings, is as a mother. So if you were filling out an empathy map about me and other people like me that work at USC, how I talk about myself would probably be like, I show up really hard for my students. And I work really hard to meet my kids' needs and help them experience like joy in the world. But I would probably not talk about like, I am a person who has suffered tremendously because of institutional disparities towards women. You know, that's true. But I don't talk about myself that way because I find it unpleasant to talk about that, especially in almost any sort of public setting. Yeah, that's like a fine point that Bowen's helping us get to, but I really want to hold that for us. Because often the challenge that we want to help our user overcome is not even one that they talk about. And what that means is that if you put up a billboard right here in this room that says, have you been experiencing institutional disparities as a female professor? Buy my product. I won't buy it. You see that? So I don't talk about myself that way. And I probably won't talk to you about it if you interview me about it. But if you were to put up a billboard that said, do you want the very best for your students? And do you care deeply about the dignity that your children experience in the world? Buy that product. I'm gonna go, heck yeah. How much does it cost? I'll take 7. Do you see that distinction? That's why it's so significant to know, how does this user actually talk about themselves in the world? Most of us do not walk around saying things like, oh, Jasmine was here a second ago. I'm a child who has experienced multiple sources of trauma and I have a 4 on the ACEs score. The ACEs is a scoring of childhood trauma. Nobody talks about themselves that way. I am a parent who is experiencing food insecurity. People don't talk about themselves that way. But what they do talk about is, I'm really trying to do my best for my kids, trying to balance a lot, trying to make sure that my kids' needs are met, and I'm super busy. That is how someone would talk about themselves. I'm so appreciative that you shared that insight, Bowen. So the function, one second, the function of an empathy map is to help us recognize the gaps in our awareness. Remember that term? Empathy is recognizing the gaps in our awareness. If you know right now that there are parts of this that you found more or less difficult to fill in, that's where you know you want to spend time getting to know your user. If you don't know right now, what does your user spend their time doing on a regular basis? That's where you wanna spend your time. What does this user want to achieve in the world? Were their wants, needs, dreams, or ambitions? Literally, that's what you ask them. Can you tell me about some of your dreams for you and your family? Can you tell me about some of your dreams for you and your partner? Can you tell me about some of the dreams for you? Please.
I want to ask, there's so many things which are not spoken of in public.
Yeah.
And you would like to know them when innovating your product, and how do you access this information which is not being spoken about?
Great. So I find that, I mean, you could take a whole class with me, a whole entire class where we just do user methods for 15 weeks. It's a really good class. I hope you take it. And
It's over.
as a, maybe take the next semester. As a shorthand, though, I would say, and Trina's gonna share these slides afterwards, go back to this list of tell me about a time when, what was the best time, what was the worst time, a day in your typical life, and who do you talk to? And those answers will begin to give people opportunity to talk about what really matters to them. So if you ask me, who do you talk to most regularly? I'm gonna say, every day I talk to my best friend, Paul. And then you would say, why is that? And I'd say, oh, he's the best. We met 20 years ago and we just show up so hard for each other. And then you're gonna ask, what does it mean to show up for each other? And then I'm gonna say, well, this is a very tender moment right now. And as a Jewish person in America, I'm holding a lot right now. And Paul always knows just how to take care of me. And he identifies as queer. And he feels like he's not really seen in the world. And I always worry about him, and he knows that I worry about him so much. What did you just learn that you didn't know before? And I would have never come out with those answers, right? A second ago. And I would really say that, yes. I mean, maybe it would take me like more than a sentence, but like we get there eventually. If you ask me to talk about my Paul. Oh, who else do I talk to? I talk to my brother Craig. Oh, why do you talk to him so much? Well, I have 3 brothers. He's the one I talk to all the time. Oh, he and his wife are pregnant. They've had 6 years of IVF. It's incredible. That's interesting. I would have never thought that a second ago. Right? So most people don't just go around filling out survey questions when they're talking to us. But when we start to just literally lift up the hood a little bit by asking people about their daily life, how they make their choices, who they talk to, they'll start telling us a lot more than they would have before. That's kind of my best advice for you.
So would you say that you're always functioning on not the ultimate data, but like, let's say 80% or 70% of data, we are always functioning on that?
Yeah, I would say you want to keep at the front of your mind constantly these 2 buckets of data. The challenges and needs your user experience and the routines, habits, behaviors, and values that exist in abundance in your user's life. And you want quantitative and qualitative responses to this. So if you know that a person is in their car during the day, how long are they in their car? How far are they driving? If you know that a person I hinted about some of my behaviors and values just a second ago, see if you can get numbers around that. Yeah, and see if you can really get granular on that. And then you didn't ask this, but you have to do it at scale. If you only talk to Abby and I specifically mentioned my friend Paul and why I care about him, it's cool, now you know something about Abby. But if you talk to 60 female university professors and you start to notice patterns, oh, that's interesting. A lot of them keep in touch with their best friends from college. That's wild. What can I do with that? Right? Oh, a lot of them spend 4 hours in a car every day. That's interesting. I wonder where that is. Then you start to get volume accordingly. Okay, these are great questions. I want to leave you with a couple things. You'll have to, Trina's going to send out this deck and you'll have to guess why certain things are in here. To come to your own conclusions. This is going to be a homework assignment for you that I would strongly recommend you do if you haven't done it already today. Write down 2 challenges that your user experiences right now. And here's an example that I'm giving. Men between the ages of 40 and 50 who are recently diagnosed with diabetes avoid doctor appointments because whenever they see a doctor, the doctor gives them another list of foods that they can't eat. Don't want to go to the doctor. If you can write statements that look like this for your user, they're really granular, they're specific about a user. They talk about what the user is feeling or experiencing. And they talk about the root of the challenge. What's under not wanting to go to the doctor? It just gives me a list of more things that I can't eat. The root of it, not the structural cause for it, not like the proliferation of fast food and high carbohydrate foods in the modern United States diet. That's zooming out. I want to zoom in. The reason I don't like going to the doctor is because my life gets worse when I go in this particular way. Okay, so this is your homework. See if you can write down 2 challenges that your user experiences. If you can't, talk to more people, which you should be doing anyway. And then Trina is gonna help us send out the link to this video.
I already have it.
And this is a video, if you tuned out everything I said today, or you only like things that come in TikTok reels, this is a 6-minute video that I think you'll find incredibly helpful about what to ask, that some of you have talked about, okay? This is just a dude, just one dude in his opinion, but he spent 6 minutes on something that I could easily lecture for an entire semester on. So I would strongly advise you and your group listening to this, watching this video. Finally, if you like what you learned today, the good news is we're spending a whole year together. And also, I would love to see some of you in my class next semester. For undergrads, I teach BAEP 471. And for grad students, I teach BAEP 558. And we spend 15 weeks on this topic. Okay, and these are my office hours. If you want to meet with me, fifermandell.as.me, and you can just sign up right away. You can also email me, but I very rarely check email, if I'm being very honest. Okay, so thank you all. Trina, when will we see each other next?
It's in January. Okay, usually in January. So you get a chance to really start talking to users. I mean, that is the idea of talking about this. You're gonna watch that video, again, 6 minutes, right? Customer discovery. It's really talking to your users, right? And you have these great steps, talk to user. When was the last time you, I wrote them all down, I've got them, I even got some little notes on them, and we love notes. So I'm gonna be sharing like a Google Drive with you all that has all this kind of information and such. So
Great. Thank you for your time and participation today, and I hope you have very pleasant break. I also wanted to say, I realized today that I was being really binary in the way that I was using genders in this classroom. And I want to apologize for that. I caught myself midway through being quite binary, and I'm going to make it a point to change my habits in that regard going forward. So I hope you all have a very pleasant day and a very pleasant week. And it looks like there might be some pizza opportunities for the road. Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.